Dr. Fred Moss, how are you?
I'm good. It's great to be here. Good to see you.
I appreciate you coming on and giving your perspective from the medical and psychiatric side of this conversation.
Sure.
Let me give the audience an introduction here for you so they get a little bit of a feel for who you are, what you've done, and what you are currently doing. You are known as the Undoctor, a board-certified psychiatrist with an MD from Northwestern University, Feinberg School of Medicine, Bachelor of Science in Biological Sciences from Wayne State University right here in Detroit. You spent 4 decades working inside nearly every corner of modern psychiatry, and then chose to widen the conversation beyond diagnosis and protocol to what actually heals human beings. You've treated over 30,000 patients across private practice, telehealth, correctional healthcare, and nursing homes, consulting for 40-plus long-term care facilities, and serving as an expert witness in courtrooms across the U.S. You're an author and methodology creator behind the Creative 8 and True Voice methodologies, and you've written books that include Creative 8, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression, and Find Your True Voice, using creativity and self-expression as practical tools for transformation. Over 300 podcast guest appearances and 300 plus episodes hosted across your own shows, described by hosts as grounded, surprising, and deeply human. Someone who doesn't just talk about healing, but creates spaces for it to happen in real time. This has become something I'm very passionate about. It's creating those spaces where true healing can take place rather than sustaining an individual's diagnosis. So, as I mentioned prior to us jumping on here, I don't have a whole lot of structure other than my very first question, and that is, where were you born and what was life like as a kid for Fred Moss?
That's really great. Thank you. So I was born in Detroit, and
Okay.
I in the northwest suburbs. I grew up in Park, Michigan, and then
Oh, yeah. Okay.
so I moved to Southfield when I was 13, and that's where I graduated with Southfield Lathrup in 1976. And it's a great question because I was born to a family that was in a fair amount of conflict and chaos and disarray. I had 2 brothers. I still do, 10 and 14 years older than me. And you can imagine with 2 teenage boys and some young parents that there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of
Yeah.
disagreements and conflict. And my job, as I was told later on by both my brothers, was to bring joy and peace and happiness and unity to that family that was already disintegrating. So upon arrival, that's really what I did, is that it brought people together, and I listened and I cared and I learned. And I was a rolling bundle of joy. I was, I'd come out and smile, come out and laugh, or come out and cry, or come out and make a difference. Every time I made a difference, I would learn that communication was so important and that all I had to do was be myself and that I could actually change a room. And
Right.
early on, we're talking about before even the playpen, probably before I could even walk, that was just who I was. I was a healer. And so I've been a healer my whole life. And it's just been the pathway that I've been on. It's not been necessarily a straight pathway. There's been a lot of meandering and a lot of, circuitous, a lot of circuitous paths I've taken. I've been all over the country, all over the world. And, just trying to learn what are some of the global universal truths about humanity. And so early on, I was very precocious. I had these 2 brothers who taught me about things other people my age didn't know, like drugs and sex and rock and roll. And by the time I made it to school, I already knew how to write a little bit. I knew how to read a little bit. I knew how to do math. And so I was sort of ahead of the class, right? And
Yeah.
I was always articulate. I was always funny. I was always tall. And so there was I was like a focal point early on in elementary school. And teachers, there's no teacher in my elementary school who ever forgot having Fred as, I'm pretty sure. I raised raise the dust every so often. I'd talk whenever I wanted to. I would ask questions. I would question authority. And all I really wanted to do was learn everything that I could about how people work. Like what does it mean to be an adult? What does it mean to be a contributor? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a player? Or what does it mean? What's important? What's not important? Where should I spend my time and energy?
Yeah.
And, that's what I did all the way through elementary school, usually a little bit disappointed with what school had to offer because it wasn't a place to openly communicate. And that's all I really wanted to do was openly communicate. So, I got more and more disappointed thinking at school, like, where else are you going to learn how to communicate but in school? But each time as the grades advance, it became more and more restricted. Right? Like, junior high, it was like, sit down, be quiet. We don't even want to hear from you. By high school, it was even worse. And so I started skipping a lot of school. I skipped a lot of school. By junior year, I was skipping. I think I got credit for skipping over 200 classes in junior year. And I just screw school. I don't need school. It's not teaching me anything. And all I would do is I would go out and sometimes I just put my thumb out, and just go hitchhiking anywhere Detroit they wanted to take me. I went to Bernie Middle School out there on 11 and Lasser, and I think that's the right corner. And I went to Southfield Lathrop, and I just would put my thumb out, and just whoever picked me up, I'd go wherever they wanted to take me. I mean, that was the day. Back in the day, hitchhiking wasn't considered very dangerous.
Yeah.
So they'd take me to East Side, or they'd take me into Detroit, or they'd take me, up into the suburbs or whatever. And then I would learn whatever I needed to learn, and then put my thumb out before dinner and get back home before my food was served. And, or I'd ride my bike, mom would say, don't cross over 9 Mile. I'd be like, okay, mom. And that day, of course, I'd be past 9 Mile. Or don't cross over Woodward. I'd be like, okay, mom. And then, I'd be on east side of Woodward. And that's just how that goes.
Yeah. What type of work did your parents do during that time?
My parents, my dad was an electrician. He was a contractor. He had a little bit of a business, business going on. He had a couple of people working for him, and he switched jobs as I was a teenager. He began to sell some real estate. But his primary role when I was growing up was he'd get out in the field, he'd do he didn't just own the business, he'd do some of the contracting work and get himself muddy, get himself cold. And my mom, she went back to school while my younger sister and I were about 10 or 12. She went to Oakland University and got herself a degree in Rochester there. And so she eventually became a social worker, actually in Roseville, Michigan, in a school district. And so, and then when I eventually tripped my way into Ann Arbor, going to the University of Michigan, my mom actually she commuted and got her MSW while I was at Markley and Cousins and Alice Lloyd down there in Ann Arbor. I would meet my mom every Tuesday and Thursday because she would drive down from Southfield to get her MSW degree in Ann Arbor.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, I'm in Mount Clemens, so I know.
I didn't quite get my bike all the way to Mount Clemens, but I had a cousin. Who lived. My cousin, my uncle, and three of their kids lived in Mount Clemens, so we'd get to go there like on holidays and stuff. But it's a little bit too far of a ride from Southfield on my bike.
For sure. How about grandparents? Did you have grandparents in your life as a kid?
I did. I had grandparents. They lived down in, it was more 7 Mile Road. It was a street called Snowden. So they lived on the north side of Detroit, and still in Detroit proper. And that was my mom's parents. And my dad's parents, so they were Jewish, old school, Eastern European stuff going on with them.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'd be dropped off at my grandma's house and, with my sister. And so we spent some time learning about whatever it is that Bubba and Zeta had to offer us. And my dad did not have religious parents. He had, my dad's dad was kind of a gangster, and back in the day, he ran numbers and stuff like that with the old, what I forgot what they call the mafia. There's
The Purple Gang?
yeah, the Purple Gang. Exactly. Exactly. My dad's dad was hung out with the Purple Gang. And,
Right.
and then also, and his mom, I never met. I never met. In fact, I was named after his mom. His mom died just a year or two before me, before I was born. And so his mom was named Fanny, and that's how I got the name Fred.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So you had two brothers that are older by almost a decade.
More than a decade, both
More than a decade. And then you have a younger sister. So how is that dynamic in terms of them being older and that much of a distance between you guys? Did you guys come as on purpose, so to speak, or was it kind of an unexpected scenario?
Well, no, my parents, I think that they had a hard time raising my two brothers. I think that they took a time off so that they could get themselves grounded before they would ever consider having kids again. And, they got themselves some mental health, they got psychoanalysis. They kind of got themselves squared away better so that they could support their own relationship and maybe become better parents. And they got pregnant about a year and a half before me, and they lost that baby to a miscarriage. And so I was the follow-up to the miscarriage, and they say, was completely wanted, and it had been the apple of their eye for years. Like, someday when we're ready, we'll have another child. So again, it just kind of bolsters me up as being the unifying source. That's really what my job was. My sister, on the other hand, I'm not positive. I wouldn't say that she was unintended, but I believe it wasn't as graded like I was. Of all the four of us, I believe that, like, my first brother, he was born while my dad was overseas in World War II. And so he was my dad came home from the war to a new baby. And he was kind of unintended and a big surprise. And the same thing with my brother, Mark. I'm not sure how his level of intention or not, but I think probably, to get my older brother a brother was probably on their eye. I'm not sure so much about the details about my brother, Mark.
Yeah. Did you recognize early on that your dad being in the service and being to war, that affected him?
Oh, man.
Tremendous.
Yeah, completely. Not only that, and also being in the depression. He sold watermelons in the depression, and on the streets of Detroit. They grew up down in the hood in Detroit. I think he went to Central High School. And but every so often he would tell hair-raising stories. He wouldn't want to go into details. Hair-raising stories of his job while he was in Germany and while he was in France. And, he was a mine detector. So he was a private mine detector. And so that's what he had to do for most of his career. And so it was a little bit rough. And, he had some stories that he would tell of dastardly things that he had to do as a soldier that really did screw him up.
Yeah. And also too, that job is like fight or flight on a level.
All the time.
Like, his nervous system had to be just
in full gear.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Amazing. With having those older siblings, those older brothers, you said you kind of learned a lot before you even got to school. Did you find that once you were in elementary school that it was quickly boring as well?
Immediately, bro. Immediately. On the first day of kindergarten, I was bored. I had already been introduced to cream and Procolarum, and I was already like playing music and knew how to write, and none of my friends knew how to write. I was reading Henry Higgins and Bennett Cerf, comedy, and Dr. Seuss, and I could put together some numbers. I could actually add numbers, and so and I knew a little bit about, by that time we were talking, Kennedy was shot when I was 5, and then the Beatles came when I was 6, a major Beatle fan, like super major Beatle fan.
Yeah.
And So with all the paisley and all the peace signs and before too long, I knew a lot about the war as well, because my brothers were doing everything they could to figure out how to avoid going to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And so, I became interested in so many things that school wasn't about. I wasn't that interested in learning cursive, for instance. I wasn't that interested in, we had a thing called SRA. SRA was like a reading course. And again, I was so smart. It seemed like I knew so much, supposedly. I didn't think I knew much, but compared to the other people in my class, I knew
Right.
so much. And so I was just elevated to this weird place of being tall and precocious and left-handed and funny.
Okay.
I just like pushed the envelope left and right. So
Yeah. Left-handed on top of that. That's telling as well.
it is.
I've got a sister that's left-handed, and she thinks in a different way
I
completely.
do. All three of my siblings, one of them are left-handed, and I am, and I think differently than them. And both my parents were left-handed, by the way. But
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I was the only left-handed, so I kind of hung with my parents that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I can
My dad
imagine.
was kind of ambidextrous; he could do things with both. But my mom was definitely left-handed.
That's fascinating as well. If he was ambidextrous, that is definitely a unique trait
Yeah,
for an individual to have. The way they think, the way they see things, all of that stuff.
yeah.
As you're moving towards middle school, you said at that point it kind of started getting put onto you to shut up, be quiet, sit down, kind of a thing. Was there any aspect of that era where you felt more comfortable? Was it, you have any sports or activities like that outside of school that allowed you to get comfortable?
Well, there was a lot of things that happened. When I was 13, 1971, and so that, we're looking at 6th, 7th, 8th grade. There were riots in Detroit, and the riots downtown. The 12th Street riots that were there, we could see the smoke, and I had curfews each night and stuff like that. And there was riots in our schools too. There was racial tension in our school. So
Okay.
that was pretty difficult. And then I had garnered some degree of popularity because I was in this group called the Academically Talented Program, and they take people from all the schools inside of Oak Park. So from Pepper or from, I forgot some of the names. This Roosevelt was a school. The Einstein was a school. I forgot. There were some other schools that were there.
Yeah.
Francis Scott Key School. And they would bus us over to the townships, Royal Oak Township. And, and there was to George Washington Carver School. And there, it was because there would be like two of us from each school that got handpicked, and then we would go there twice a week. And so I had a little bit of notoriety inside of the Oak Park School District. And again, being tall, I wasn't a very good basketball player, but I was clearly going to be a center. And I love basketball. And what about those Pistons, by the way? I mean, dude, like, what is going on?
I have no idea.
You are not supposed to lose right now. It's just not supposed. This is not how this should have gone. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And they haven't lost yet between you and me, but it's 3-1 at this point, and I'm watching my boys closely.
Yeah.
So I like basketball, and I did find some comfort. I knew the Tigers. I still know the entire 1968 team.
Nice.
I know that World Series. We got to take school off. So I was a big baseball fan, big basketball fan. And more than anything, though, I think it was music. So
all right,
on the back end of the Beatles, on the back end of Cream and Procol Harum, and, the Starship, which was, and then, Hendrix, and I was into hard rock at the time. And, I think there was comfort that I had there. But 1971 was a difficult year. I had, we had this when we moved from Oak Park to Southfield. It was because things were so chaotic in Park, and so there was this urban blight to move even further northwest, right? And so a lot of people were moving from Oak Park to Southfield, and then eventually from Southfield to the even more northwest suburbs like Bloomfield Hills and Bridgeton and all that. And then I went to a camp. I went to a camp up in Utterson, Ontario, and I met this girl there, and we were inseparable for the summer for 56 days and, for 8 weeks. And then we separated just because camp ended. She went back to Pittsburgh. I came back to Detroit, and we stayed together. I still have her letters from me here. I think you might see where this is going. And I got a call one Sunday from our mutual friend, Nancy, who also lived in Oak Park, but was friends with both me and Steffi, the name of my girlfriend. And Steffi had been killed. And so Steffi died when I was 13, right in the top level of where I've never been in a relationship before or since, at the pinnacle.
Yeah.
And so that was a big thing to go through as well, and altered the way I looked at the world. And then shortly after that, then I knew I was like a 13-year-old widow, and now my friend, again, I catapulted ahead of my friends. My friends don't know, most of them never even had a girlfriend, let alone a girlfriend at this high level, let alone a dead girlfriend, And so that changed things. And when I moved to Southfield, that was a little bit disoriented. We actually moved in that 8-week period, by the way. So while Steffi was still with me, but in that 8 weeks after camp ended, but before the new school year started,
right,
is when we moved. And I think shortly after that, marijuana became pretty important to me. I really found, it was like brought me some form of pleasure or some form of being able to smile and not be sad or scared as much. I like smoking weed back in the day, for sure.
Was that your first experience with death?
Oh, yeah. That was my first. Well, no, I guess my grandpa and my mom's dad had died.
Okay.
So I had that, but it's not the same.
No, for sure.
Buddy, when it's like up here, 6 months later, after Steffi got killed, I had another friend named Steve Kaz, and he rumbled with me. We had a few friends, a little clan of us, Richard and Steve and me. And Steve also was sitting in a passenger seat of a car, and they got T-boned, and Steve died 6 months later.
Oh, wow.
So that was also my buddy, and that was in 72. So Steffi was October of 71, and Steve was
72.
April of 72.
Yeah. Wow. That's tough, especially at that age, to experience two close people to you.
Yeah.
And the realization that you're not going to have them around anymore.
You're not going to have them around anymore. And, and then there was all the stuff that was going on with the riots. And so things were falling, the riots in Vietnam and Nixon, and they're all going on around the same time.
Yeah.
So things get a little bit, I launched into some chaos, and it hasn't gotten less chaotic since then, by the way.
Right. For sure. For sure. I imagine the weed also calmed some of that tension inside that you had experienced.
It gave me an identity. I really did love smoking it. And, I'd smoke it every day, and Southfield Lathrop was a great place to weed, for sure. And, we had this little field out in front of the school that all the kids would just go out there in between classes, and they couldn't stop us. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know what we were doing, and we were just partying all day long. And, so I had really long curly hair, and there was something about the identity of being a stoner, I guess, but it was more than a stoner, because a stoner became a term later on. This was just someone who loved getting high, and I would get high. By lunch every single day, I'd toast it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and then I liked late night TV. I learned to really like David Letterman a real lot. And I thought he was just the funniest guy I'd ever seen. I still think he When he's on, that dude is the funniest dude in the world.
Right, right.
And so I'd stay up at night and do that, or by that time I had pretty good record collection, and so I could I'd entertain myself that way, and I
Right.
didn't have to do very much homework. And by this time, I already kind of despised school, so I didn't do homework, but I had enough going on that I could at least pass. I ended up in the middle of my 530 graduating class. I think I was number 260, but the truth was, for sure, I had the skill set to be in the top five. It's just like, I ended up going to Michigan, so I did okay for myself that way.
Yeah.
But I just had to give it, by the time I'm skipping school all the time, and I still got physics in, I still got calculus and then high level biology, but I was limping my way through. And so,
Right.
yeah.
Were there any Detroit acts at that time that were musically influential for you?
Ted Nugent was there. So we had him, and Bob Seger, of course, was there. And I had an amazing concert experience at several. I went to 3 concerts a week on all whoever showed up. I was there, and of course, Stevie Wonder, Diana. Stevie actually played on our block one time when I was 11.
Cool.
Little Stevie, bigger.
Yeah.
And then Diana, and they lived in the towers, and those towers off of the lodge in Southfield. All 3 of them lived on the top floor. So we knew they were there. And the Temps, of course, the Temps and the Four Tops and Smokey Robinson and
Right.
all of Motown long before it left to LA was, it was really, Motown was very important and influential for me. And I actually went to the Motown, last time I was in Detroit, I went to down to the Motown Museum, which was pretty fun that way. I think it was Woodward. It's a pretty cool facility.
Yeah.
And got to really relive some of that. The other Detroit acts, let's see, Detroit rock. I think we're really looking at just Seger and Nugent and let's see. Oh, Mitch Ryder, obviously he was back there. And then I had this experience where, because I was an audiophile, I had a friend whose mother was the music critic for the Free Press. And so she would go and see all these cool concerts and then write about it. She'd see them in the week, and then the Wednesday Free Press, she would have a fold out. She would have a little column on Wednesday Free Press. Maybe it was the news too, I think. I don't know. I think it was a Free Press, however. And she told us one time that she couldn't go to this Tuesday night show. She was busy, so she asked Mark and I to go. And she said, "Is this guy there who's supposed to be that's pretty good, and maybe he's going to be the next Bob Dylan or something." So we got in our little Mercury Capri, and we drove down to Hill Auditorium in Ann Arbor, and didn't know who we were seeing, even though we were audiophiles. We had no idea what we were going into. No idea. And it was a general admission at Hill Auditorium. And we got it, walked in, it was 12th row center, just kick up our feet. Here we go. What are we going to see?
Yeah.
It was none other than Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. And
wow.
So we were treated 4.5 hours, 2 intermissions, all night long, just killing it, just killing Born to Run. And
wow.
I had never heard any piece of Born to Run until I was at that show. And I had never heard, live or the Wildly Innocent E Street Shuffle and Greeting from Asbury Park. He played Rosalita. They went all the way deep. And that was his 3rd album. So Born to Run, his 3rd album. And, just tear-jerkingly, it was like life-saving amazing. It was literally life-saving. By that time, I was like skidding and coming out. You see these 2 earrings here. These 2 earrings are a function of that concert, I would say. That.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's not like I've worn earrings every day since then, but he was the first dude I had seen wearing like any kind of fashionable earrings, and he had that hair in his head. Of course, Clarence is so important, and and Stevie Van Zandt, and Miami Steve, and and Max, and they were all there. So we came back to school the next day. Somehow, I'm not even sure how we made it back to school, but our voices were gone. We had been sleeping all night. And so people were like, what's going on? And we told them that we had seen the best show that had ever happened, which is true. I've seen Bruce a number of times since, but that show, that's actually where he started singing the Detroit medley. He sang the Detroit medley at that show. If you look it up, it was that show that he played it for the first time. And every single concert since then, he has played it, but it started off at that show in Ann Arbor.
Oh, wow.
And so, Double with the Blue. That's how I remember Mitch Ryder and stuff. Is, CC Ryder. And so we bought tickets. He was coming down to the Michigan Palace. It might have been Masonic Temple, because those two places, they were kind of interchangeable as far as we're concerned. Because it was just a small venue in downtown Detroit, Palace or the Temple. I didn't know which one it would be. I think this was Michigan Palace. We bought 12 tickets for row 2, and because nobody knew who Springsteen was yet. We knew, but no one else knew. So we bought the whole row, and we took all of our friends from Lathrop. My sister and his brother went, and we promised it was $9 tickets, and we promised that it would be the best show they've ever seen, or they could have their money back. So now when we go to reunions, and my 50th reunion is this summer, when we go to reunions, we're given the credit for introducing Lathrop to Springsteen.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's amazing. I know from my experience of working in some of the local venues here in Metro Detroit that when you have the opportunity to experience an artist before they get to their popular level, it's amazing.
I've had that luck before. I've had that luck since as well. So in 1984, a few years later, somehow, I dropped out of college a couple times because school.
Okay.
I did drop out of college, and I got on a bus and went to Berkeley, California to find out what my life was about. And, and I had a whole summer there that was great, but it was unsustainable. And then I went back to Ann Arbor, and because they told me that there's this new technology that they thought I would have an aptitude for. My brothers and my parents, they weren't really worried about me. Maybe they were, I don't know. But, I'm not doing this school thing. I'm like, so out of here.
Yeah.
And, but obviously I'm a doctor, so I did a fair amount of school. So, at the time I didn't know that would happen. And I came back and eventually dropped out a second time. The new technology was computers. Be good at computers. But there was only one computer in all of Michigan, and it was down on Ann Arbor's campus. And so it was, so back to Ann Arbor I went for a second ride. And I didn't last. I'm not going to do Fortran and COBOL the rest of my life. We're not doing that. So I dropped out again, and I got a job with the Michigan Social Service. Social Service. And, what do they call it? Civil service. Yeah.
Civil service.
So I got a job as Elizabeth Lake Road and Telegraph, which is where Clinton Valley Center is. So that's, it used to be called the Eastern Michigan Asylum, and then Clinton Valley Center and Fairlawn Center. And Fairlawn Center, where I first took a bite out of being in the mental health field. And I didn't know, there was 2 jobs available. I believe one of them might have been in Mount Clemens, to be honest. I think my second job would have been offered. It was in Mount Clemens or somewhere on the east side. I'm pretty sure it might have been Mount Clemens. And that was to work in the unemployment office. So I had an opportunity to work in the unemployment office or in the mental health field. And I chose the mental health field because it was starting sooner, and it had a 3-week orientation, and I knew I could get paid at least 3 paychecks before I started work. I figured I'd take those 3 paychecks and buy myself a car, and I'm out of here. You got shit to do.
Right.
That's how I started there. And I ended up, I was really expecting to quit after 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Totally. My friend Paul, who was in fact from Mount Clemens, for sure, Paul Kowalski, he convinced me to go back onto the floors in the 4th week. So we went up to Meadowview 5, and And then I was like, okay, I can stay 3 more weeks because then I'll just get a later model car, and then I'll just drive around and figure out what my life is about. And so I worked in 3-week chunks, and like each time 3 weeks would come, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna go. And Polly and Fred, you can't go. And I was like, okay, stay a little bit. And so I thought I was going to quit in 3 weeks, over and over and over and over and over again, including, I like to joke, but it's almost true, up until now. I have been living thinking I'm going to quit in 3 weeks for 46 freaking years.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So what was the thing that did keep your interest in staying on? Was it just his encouragement to stay on, or was
I fell in love with the kids, I mean, I just started treating these kids the way they need. Same kind of thing. It's welcome to humanity. I didn't see these kids as trouble. I didn't see them as trouble. Yeah. I just saw them as humans. I got really good at being a childcare worker. And so they gave me a van. I started working afternoon shift, and they gave me access to the van so I could take the kids out to field trips at Greenfield Village or Silverdome or Buddy's Pizza or whatever I wanted to do. I would do it and just take my kids there.
Yeah.
Or Tiger Stadium, we didn't go to Tiger Stadium that often. I went there way often. I was at Tiger Stadium over 30 times a year for sure. Because I wouldn't always go to so you might not know this, but maybe you do. There was a point in Tiger Stadium where if you arrived at a game after the 7th inning, they let you in free.
Yep.
You just have to go through the main entrance there on Trumbull, Michigan. And then if you walked in late, they just go find a seat. No problem. So when my shift would end on Elizabeth and Telegraph, because sometimes I'd be let out by 10:30 or even a little bit earlier, I think sometimes even 10 o'clock, I just get in my car, get on the lodge and I'll go down to Michigan, Trumbull, park right out in front, find some seat and then buck my way in. I remember some unbelievable games that I got to see the end of.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like Yankee games. I remember Dave Winfield and just some, I saw some very cool stuff in the back end of Tiger games. And so I stayed a Tiger fan the whole time. But in 84, the same thing, back into the Springsteen concept. In 84, when I finally started medical school, I guess that's an important transition here as well. I liked my job at Clinton Valley. I was really called Fairlawn Center, the child area, but I hated psychiatry. I hated the way psychiatry was going. Could not.
Okay.
I could see the future the way it was going, and I was like, I can't just let this happen to these people. And so I went in as a hero because I went into psychiatry. I went into medical school to become a psychiatrist so that I could be a hero and change the direction of them, at least some version of where psychiatry was.
Yeah.
And so I was eventually accepted at Northwestern University in downtown Chicago. And that's a cool story in itself for sure. And that's a cool Detroit story. And when I arrived there in 1984, if you haven't put it together, there was another pretty good athlete that was arriving there that same year. And he wore number 23, and it was pretty fun. I've had season tickets for the Bulls for all 4 years of medical school.
Oh, man.
They were called the Sweet 16. So I didn't go to 41 games. I went to 16 games and the playoffs. And they took them to 86 to make the playoffs. But
Nice.
I saw, and people just didn't know in 1984 that he was the dude. There was like my brother lived out in San Francisco, and every night I'd go, I'd see stuff and hear stuff. It was so fun down at the stadium.
Yeah.
In his rookie year, he'd pull shit off that nobody had ever done ever.
Exactly.
Every night he'd be pulling stuff off that, like, dude, no one's ever done it. No one's ever done it. You just did. And we would have so much fun down at the stadium. And I'd call my brother afterwards because it'd still be early in San Francisco, and that's where he was living. My one 10 years older than me. I'd call him. I'd say, man, I'm watching the best athlete I've ever seen in my life. He goes, no. He's not that good. I'm like, no. Yes.
Yeah, you're not seeing him up close.
He's like, no, what about Chris Mullen? I'm like, Chris Mullen is good. It's true. Chris Mullen's a player. Chris Mullen's not Michael Jordan, just to let you know.
Exactly.
And that one, yeah.
That's amazing. Just to tie into your Tiger Stadium storyline.
Yeah.
When I was
I
little,
had some ushers who were my friends. Ushers up in upper deck behind home plate were my friends. And so when I'd go to games, I'd go sit in the bleachers because $4 got us in the bleachers. And so that was when I go to like Saturday games, like at Bird, Mark Fisher's games or whatever. Yep. Those were, I'd sit on, sometimes I'd sit in the bleachers. But if I know Saturday night, I know it's games after work, I just get a seat right behind home plate.
For sure. My dad's first cousin played pro ball. His name was Clyde Wright.
Okay.
And so he played with Milwaukee Brewers. He played with California Angels. And he played with Texas Rangers.
Okay.
Played with 3 teams. So every time that they would come to Detroit, he would always
all 3 of those teams, by the way, you named their next version. So what used to be the Los Angeles Angels and the Brewers used to be the Milwaukee. They had a different last name. Brewers was a late name.
Yeah.
I forgot. It was Milwaukee Braves. They were the Milwaukee Braves.
Yeah.
With Hank Aaron, they were the Milwaukee Braves.
Yeah.
And what was the third? Oh, the Texas Rangers are totally an expansion team. Totally an expansion team. Go ahead, though.
So he would always leave tickets for my dad at the box office. So we'd get to go down there. And a lot of times we were sitting behind the dugout in that, that section there. Yeah. And we'd be the only ones sitting there.
Yeah.
And I was like, why are we the only ones sitting here? Like, it didn't ever make sense to me. And I didn't realize, well, we're sitting on the opposite team.
Opposite team. Got it.
We're sitting on the opposite team side. So of course, there's not going to be a whole lot of Detroit people in this section.
Let me take a break. I'll be right back. Okay.
Sure thing. So every time that he would come to town, we would be able to go down there and watch the games and stuff. And eventually, after he finished pitching, he was a pitcher. So that was another thing about him. He pitched a no-hitter one time. He's in that club.
Yeah.
Now he's got a pitching school with the Angels in Anaheim.
Nice.
And then his son eventually went pro as well, Jarrett Wright.
All right. I know that name.
Played for Cleveland for a while, Atlanta for a while.
Yeah. He was a pitcher too, right?
Yep. Father-son.
He was a lefty, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. Exactly. So that was part of my memories of Tiger Stadium, the old Tiger Stadium at a point in time. And then in terms of basketball, around that era, like my favorite player was Dr. J. Because of all the things that he was doing. And then we see Michael come on the scene, and immediately in my mind, I'm like, oh, that's some Dr. J style stuff. But he was also, like you said, doing stuff that nobody was. He was going beyond that level.
For sure.
With going into the Chicago area and having that transition from Detroit to Chicago, you said there's a fascinating Detroit story there.
Right.
And if you don't mind sharing that, let's go in.
Yeah. So how did I get into medical school? This is kind of a spotted course, kind of dropping out a couple of times and skipping school and getting high and all that. Like, what am I doing in medical school? And, I had first year when I was still working at, I guess I was working at the state hospital for a while. I had a girlfriend who worked at Hawthorne, which is another state hospital. So Hawthorne and Fairlawn were 2 different state hospitals. And then Hawthorne was down, it was south, it was down at like 9 Mile in Farmington or something, I don't know, something like that. And I could be wrong by a couple miles in both directions. But anyways, for those who are checking my facts,
Right.
I decided I want to go to medical school. And so the first year, because I, thought so highly of myself, I just figured I'd just apply to school and they just accept me because after all, I'm me. And
Right.
so I applied to 3 schools, Michigan, Wayne, and Michigan State. And those were the only 3 schools in Michigan. And I applied to all 3 of them. And I got rejected in all 3 of them. I was like, what is that? I'm not down with being rejected at all. So I went back to, that's when I completed my degree at Wayne State. I think I had already, I went back for extra courses. So like comparative anatomy. And then I did some volunteer work at Providence Hospital.
Okay.
And then I did my MedCats again. And now I was an actual candidate for medical school. So over the next year. And so I applied around the country for schools that I knew that their entry requirement did not require a very good grade point average, but I could interview well. And I had world-class MedCat scores. So I had those 2 things going on, and I didn't have that great of a grade point. So Northwestern University was one of the schools I could apply to, and they looked at my application. I think they accept 6,200 people, and I'm sorry, they get applications for 6,200 and accept 160. And I had to get interviewed. They offered me an interview, so I got on a train in Royal Oak, and at the Royal, the famous Royal Oak station,
The Amtrak. Yeah.
Yeah, I got on that train, and it was cold. It was. We both know what cold is.
Yes.
You know cold. No, this is different. This is different. This is different cold.
Right.
So cold. And I had already arranged, because I didn't have any money. I had when I had it. I was pretty independent by that time. I'd already arranged to live in the dorm with an upperclassman, so I didn't have to pay hotel. And I took the train because I couldn't afford a plane and all that. But in Gary, Indiana, the tracks froze, so the train had to stop in Gary on the way to Chicago, and we got into Gary, Indiana school buses to take us to Union Station. And we got dropped off there. It was cold, dude. It was cold, man.
I can imagine. We just had a rough winter this year.
Yeah, rough winter this year. Up there, I see those Mackinac runs. Man, Mackinac got nailed. Still getting nailed. I just saw it today. It's like up in Houghton and stuff, they're still getting hammered with deeply cold weather up there.
Yeah.
And so anyways, that's, we persevered, and I made it on the campus, which is right on the Miracle Mile, like, Chicago and Lakeshore. And I had to I left myself one activity, and that was going to get some shoe shine at the Walgreens on Michigan and Chicago. And so I meant that I had to walk there from the dorm, which is 5 blocks. If I haven't already mentioned it, it was cold. It was. I had my parka, I had my face mask, I had it. There was no skin, and I still was like frozen.
Yeah.
There was like a couple of feet of snow on the ground. And the interviews, there was supposed to be 5 people interviewed that day, and there's only 2 of us that got interviewed. It was me, and there was Debbie from San Diego. She flew in. And me and her somehow got interviewed that day. But the 3 people who couldn't make it were all from the North Shore. And they couldn't make it because it was wet. They couldn't make it for their own med school interview because they were local. Me and Debbie, we got in from other cities, and we were perseverant. And I think they liked both of our tenacity, and they accepted both of us that day. So
Nice.
That's how I got into Northwestern Medical School.
Wow. Okay. So once you get into medical school, how is that for you in terms of piquing your interest and keeping your interest versus what you've always been accustomed to?
I don't have any interest in medical school. I'm not interested in medical school. I'm interested in the Bulls. I'm interested in the streets of Chicago. I'm interested in Rush Street. I'm interested in the north, and then in the near north. I'm interested in Wrigley Field. I'm interested. I did a lot of ushering. I had another girlfriend there, and I did a lot of ushering in the theaters, and so I did a lot of theater work, and
Okay.
a lot, walking up and down Michigan Avenue or the beach. I'm way interested in Chicago. Way interested in Chicago. Zero interest in medical school. So the first term, I buzzed through, and I think it was a pass-fail system. So all you had to do was pass. And, in order to pass, all you had to do was end up in the top 95% of any test.
Okay. Got it.
5% guaranteed failure.
Got it.
So we had this mathematical equation we lived on called P equals MD, which meant pass equals die.
Oh, that's classic.
So, if all you have to do is pass. And so it's like I could pass most of the time. And so there's some people who were less capable than me who would fill that failure run, so I wouldn't have to fail.
Yeah.
And by the end of first year, they were already teaching things that I knew would never, ever be pertinent. I knew.
Okay. Yeah.
And so why would I waste my freaking time sitting in class doing that?
True. I'm with you. I hate school.
I can't even understand. If I sat in class, I wouldn't be any better off.
Right.
I still can't understand a word they're saying. Why should I sit in class and feel worse and worse every minute after minute? Like they're teaching me shit that I couldn't understand even on a good day.
Right.
Why would I stay in class? So Janet and I, that's when we started doing all this stuff. We were on the L every day. Going from all the way from Northbergs to, Oak Park on the far west, or, even in the South Side. We go to the South Side every so often, University of Chicago, or even beyond that, Chinatown, whatever. But medical school was kind of like a speed bump in my ride through Chicago. I was able to eventually get through the rotations, all sorts of tricky stories there as well.
Yeah.
In third year. And then in fourth year, I worked at Cook County. I worked at the VA. I worked at a number of places. I met my wife, who was then to be my wife, in my fourth year. Janet and I had finally broken up. And I married in my first year of internship after medical school. We got married up on the fringe of Cook and Lake County there. And I was living in the near north. And Sue came down there. We lived together, and then we got married, and then we moved to Cincinnati, and that's where my career exploded.
Okay. When you got married, was that close to the love that you had at 13?
It's a great question. No, that's a really good question. No one's ever asked me that question. That's a good one. No, what Sue was for me is that I was so heavily dating. I had a lot of girlfriends, and so many that it seemed to me like I would get them mixed up. I'd be afraid that I'd be out with Sally and call her Sue, or, be out with, I'd be like, I don't even remember what it's you from the lab show I went out last week. I don't know.
Where?
So it was so out of control that I just felt like, I'm about to be a doctor. I probably should put some stability into this team. And so when Sue was a nurse, she was a nurse at Evanston Hospital with me being a doctor there. And I decided, when I met her, she gave me a ride home. We used to take the L Express, to Evanston. And she gave me a ride home in her station wagon. She lived up in Northbrook and Deerfield area. I knew, like, the minute I met her that we were going to get married.
Okay.
It's like, okay, this is a woman who can deal with me enough and hold down the fort, and she's responsible. She'd be a great mom. And so, before too long, we had a couple of cats, and then we got.
Gotcha. Okay. But still wasn't that same.
Oh, man. Nobody.
That was a soul.
Nobody's ever going to match that.
Yeah, that was the soul connection.
Yeah.
For sure.
I see every day. I talk about her every day. Well, I don't talk about her every day, but she's in my mind every day. I at least mention her, and at least think about her. And like when I somehow have connected her to the moon. So whenever I need a prayer or a reminder, there's Steffi there watching me. She's pretty supportive of all the shit.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Very cool. After you get married, you're starting to get stabilized somewhat and
Somewhat.
are realizing, okay, I've got to start changing a little bit here to make it through. What is the next step in the career movement that you have at that point?
Yeah. The internship was down at University of Illinois, Chicago. And so we weren't quite married yet. I did a lot of bike riding, so go down Eisenhower. So I lived in near North. I don't know if you know the area, but it's about 5 miles away. I ride my bike to my internship for first year. When Sue and I got married at the end of my first year internship, I secured a spot in Cincinnati at the residence, and my residency, the rest of my residency would be in Cincinnati.
Okay.
And so I remember this drive we took down 65 and Indiana, the whole thing to 74 to Cincinnati. And so what is it I'm aiming at? Remind me what this question is.
What is that impactful moment of being in Cincinnati, that career boom?
Yeah, I think we end up buying a home on the west side of Cincinnati. And I think the thing that Jewish hospital, I did some rotations in Jewish hospital by second year, and then Good Samaritan Hospital, and Christ Hospital, and St. Francis St. George Hospital. And I think the critical moment is the birth of my son. I think that's my son was born in 91, so I'm already a third year resident. But I think by that time we had already moved into town, a little closer to downtown. I was now much more associated with the University of Cincinnati, and getting my teeth sharpened a little bit in psychiatry in the Cincinnati world. I was all over the place. I was doing some child work, doing some geriatric work, inpatient, outpatient, moonlighting, homeless shelters. I was the first psychiatrist resident who ever did homeless shelter work in Cincinnati down at the drop-in center. But when Bennett was born, I think that's when things get cemented. When you have a kid, they just, things change whether you wanted to or not. And so, I love my son. I still love my son. He's my best friend. And we got a long ride together. He would corroborate most of the rest of the stories that I have to say here. He probably learned a little bit from what you and I have already talked about, but for the most part, he knows most of everything we just talked about. He's the one who asked me, Dad, how the hell did you get into medical school?
Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. What I'm finding interesting too about your storyline is that you're trying a taste of everything, so to speak. You're here, there, a little bit of all of it. Was that purposely done because of an interest in humanity at that point as well? Or was it a boredom scenario?
I think they're both, that's good multiple choice. I think that they're both real. I think that I am bored, but it's more than anything. I'm kind of searching for a place I can plant myself. Is there a place is there a way of being that I can find that I can know I'm in the right place? Or my last name is Moss. And so a Rolling Stone gathers no moss is also part of it. And it's like, I'm a migrator by human design. And so I always am moving. And by the time I was spinning, there's a lot of this has to do with spinning, I think. By the time I see the corruption and the deceitfulness of psychiatry and, start seeing that the world is turning off its axis a little bit, I think I just start spinning as a reaction to being very disturbed with the way things are going. And just got to keep moving so that I
don't get caught in it.
Won't be caught. I won't be, I'm always like I eventually became a full nomad. For about 10 years as a doctor, I was a full nomad. I had no address at all. I would just work in the country in basic temporary jobs. And
Okay.
I'm even, you could say that that's the culmination of being uprooted. I was like I literally, the first phone, whenever I would call any of my friends or family, the first question would be not, who are you? And not like, what's up? It would be like, where are you? And it's like, I know, right? I don't know. Let me check what city I'm in. I don't know. But that has curtailed, over time now, like with my present wife and this home that I live here now, we're celebrating July will be his 6th year here, somehow regrounding myself as the Undoctor on the post end of my career, realizing, wow, I've really been a psychiatrist for 37 years.
Yeah.
Really been when I was hired at Fairlawn, it was January of 1980. So
Okay.
really looking at 47 years here.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I'm allowed to declare myself an expert because I am, not because of any other thing. Compared to general public,
For sure.
way expert in this field. Way
Yes.
undeniable. Well, I don't give a shit if you give a shit about what I say. It doesn't matter. I'm still
Exactly.
expert, whether you think I am or not.
Time has it locked
Time
in.
has it, exactly. And I've been inside the belly of the beast, like for this whole ride. Never shied away. I was never, I like working in the hood. I like working downtown. I like working in homeless shelters. I like working in drug treatment centers. I like work. In fact, I think I just got hired this morning for just a couple hours. When I told you it was a wild and woolly morning, I think I just got hired for a very high paying, very high prestigious full-time job down in Newport Beach, California, which is pretty cool.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. I hope
Based on
that's
my piece only, by the way. He's done a full vetting of me, and he's like, "You're our guy. We want you to be the medical director." I'm like, "That's interesting. Tell me more." And it's all about taking people off of medicine. It's all about doing addiction work. And I'm going to have an interview next week, and second interview, and I could have that job by the end of the year. And I've already quit medicine 4 times, including just a couple months ago, promising never to go back to do conventional psychiatry. But this job, for whatever reason, it allows me to use my skill set to take people off of medicine or off of the street drugs, off of Oxy or off of, whatever their choice was.
yeah.
And to be a leader while I'm doing it, and to create new policy and hiring and firing. It's like, well, and to live in Newport Beach, which is not
Yes.
that bad a deal.
Not gonna hate that at all, are you? Not gonna hate that. So you mentioned your second wife. I'm
No, this is my third wife here.
okay.
We haven't talked about my second wife yet. That's
Okay, got you. That's perfect because I'm trying to go back to the first one.
first one
The
is Sue,
yeah.
and that's the mother of both my kids.
Okay. And was part of some of that falling apart scenario related to the nomad period of time?
Part of which falling apart are we talking?
The ending of that marriage.
No, I wasn't a nomad quite yet. I think that I was an arrogant young doctor is what I was. And so,
Okay.
I think I was more inauthentic, more full of myself, more, I don't know, doctors were taught how to be pretty arrogant, and
Yeah.
I think there was just a mismatch especially with the birth of my second child. And I hate to say this out loud, but her name is Hannah, but because Hannah on the one hand, might think that she's the cause, but it isn't Hannah being Hannah is just like the coolest person ever.
Yeah.
But when you have a second child, life changes. Life changes a lot when you have a first child.
Yeah.
It is totally underrated how much life changes when you have a second child. Because all of a sudden, you are by far the fourth most important person in your family.
Yeah.
By far. It is never not true that you're anything better than the fourth most important person in your family.
Yeah.
and you're stretched to no end. You're going to come up with another $20,000 or $50,000 just to pay for the second child. So you're never home, have to be home.
Yep.
And no one gives a shit. That's the other thing. It's like when you have a first child, everyone's rallying around you. They want to have parties. They want to have homecomings. They want to have showers. They want to have whatever they have because like Fred and Sue are having a baby and like, yay.
Yeah.
The time you're having a second child, it's old news, man. No one is, it's like, oh yeah, do you hear they're having another kid? Yeah, okay, I'll pass up the potatoes. Let's go, and that's how it goes. So I think that fracture that happened as we began to be co-parents of the second of two children, and then trying to put together who she is as a nurse and she was a traveling nurse and who I am as a doc and how hard do I need to work and how about my beepers going off all night and, all the stuff that happens with being a doc. And that's it. We were no longer fit to be together. And then we went through whenever we went through. And if the proof is in the pudding, which I think it is, we have literally, I know this sounds like a homie, but we have literally the two coolest kids I've ever met. Both of our kids are so freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And they love each other. I just was with both of them last month. One of them's Hannah lives up in Portland, Oregon, and it lives down in Dallas. And it's an attorney, a very successful attorney in Dallas.
Okay.
Hannah is working with startups up in Portland, and they're just beautiful.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, truly.
When I hear stuff like that, for me, it always goes to if the parents didn't have some semblance of cool factor to themselves, it doesn't necessarily get passed on to the kids. And, just hearing about your entire story up to this point, you had a cool factor about you even before you got into elementary school. Because you had those two older brothers that basically gave you a life lesson, like fast charged.
That's true.
So I'm just seeing it play out across the whole storyline at this point.
Well, I wrote my memoirs last month. And so
wow.
Come to Humanity. And I just loaded it up this morning for a ChatGPT thread that I'm building for a speech I'm giving this week.
Okay.
In New York. I'm going to fly to New York Friday for a speech for a group of people called Teach Me to Heal. A target population of this speech in Long Island Saturday, it's up 4 days from now.
Yeah.
It's the same group was at Fairlawn. It's my old teenagers and my young adults. And I'm in that group Saturday. I'm super excited about it.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. So do we want to jump towards the second marriage or the third marriage, or should we jump into the point in time where you start to really, really realize that the way that the system is working is not conducive to who you are?
Well, they're not that far away from each other. We can go into the second one. I knew that. I really did know that when I went back to Wayne to finish my degree. I already knew that.
Okay.
I was working Fairlawn and finishing my degree. I'd drive back and forth from Detroit to Pontiac.
Yeah.
The system was fucked up already. I think when Prozac gets introduced in 1987, and so I'm a third year medical student when Prozac gets introduced, and Prozac is as big a hit as COVID. People do not realize that Prozac rocked the world.
Yes. Yes.
Not that crazy of a comparison to go Prozac and COVID. You can't compare COVID to too many things, but you can compare maybe to the impact that Prozac. So yes, Prozac changed the whole paradigm of how people thought about mental illness. All of a sudden, if you were uncomfortable, you were mentally ill. And, it was on you. If you were uncomfortable in any way, that meant you were sick. Like,
yeah,
actually, if you're hot when it's hot, then that's not on you.
Yes.
If you're confused when it's confusing, then that's not on you. If you're sad
Yeah.
when it's sad, that's not on you. That's
Yeah.
a factor of being human. So I think that this idea, people, a lot of times on podcasts, people ask me like, when did I finally realize that this was some bullshit? And the answer is, it's only been reconfirmed every day since then. It's not like
Right.
the time where I thought it wasn't bullshit. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Okay.
And my marriages, when me and Sue finally break up, then I'm online because I'm, techno friendly and I'm in AOL. I meet Deanna in a chat room called La Pub. And there was no video or anything. It was always just chatting. And we got to flirting online and seeing that each other was smart. And maybe we somehow I don't think we even sent a picture, actually. I think when we met, she was from Rockford, Illinois. And
Okay.
when we met at Midway Airport. I flew to go see her. We met at Midway, and I don't think either of us knew what the other one looked like at all. I'm pretty sure that was the direction. I'm going to be wearing a Detroit Lion jacket, which I was.
Okay.
And she's going to be, I don't know, whatever she said, whatever color jacket or something. It was like, that's how we met in the lobby or in the walkway around Midway.
Yes.
And we just hit it off. And, she's a wild girl. She was like, she had 2 girls of her own, and her marriage was breaking up as well. And so Rachel and Paige were her 2 kids. And all of a sudden, this idea that 6 of us, my 2 kids and me, and her 2 kids and her, could play became a real deal. And we, in the same sort of like always moving bread world, even while being a doctor, we found a way to meet each other maybe 45 times in that first year, like driving halfway. I would maybe go to Rockford, but typically I'd go to Indianapolis or to Chicago, and then she'd come down with her. She had a Honda Passport. I had a Durango. We'd meet halfway, or her and I would go on a trip. We went to Florida a bunch of times, or we went to New England a couple of times, but we met every weekend. Then we'd break up every week by Tuesday, by the way. But then we'd get back together by Thursday and then meet together on the weekend sometime. We did that for a whole year. And eventually moved down to Cincinnati with Rachel and Paige. And we ended up also getting married. And this was a pretty cool marriage in North Cincinnati. And it was Rachel and Paige and Hannah and Bennett were our kids. So they were 7, 5, 4, and 3 at the time. And, and Rachel, Bennett, Paige, and Hannah in that order. They were great friends. We loved each other. We just thought, let's pull this off. And so we did a wild effort putting together a family, with all the things, going to school and going to soccer games and going to Hebrew school and going to all the things that
Okay.
we pulled it off for a few years until it just internally combusted.
Busted. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And how do you meet the third one? How does that come?
Yeah. So and there's a number of women that, I don't know if I'm proud of this, but it's just true. There's a number of women who I was functionally married to. And so I had a number of relationships that lasted a couple of years, and the woman I was with, I would treat like my wife, and she would treat me like her husband, and then do what we do. My family would treat her like might as well be married. And I had that a number of times.
Okay.
And but with Alexandra is my present wife. It was entirely different. So Alexandra is, most relationships start where I look across the room and, I see someone I want, usually maybe like lustfully or some, I'm going to go get her.
Gotcha.
That wasn't how it was with Alexandra. We actually detested each other when it's a pretty cool story, but it's really true. I had never met anybody more irritating than Alexandra. As she says, the feeling was deeply and profoundly mutual. And it was that. And so we started off from the rock bottom, and I just disliked her so much that it became interesting to me to explore, how is it that you found your way into my armpit where I dislike you so much? And it was like the same kind of thing happened with her. So we got to see that where, our wounds, our unhealed traumas were were good for each other and that we could explore this. So it's interesting when you meet from that ground, you have nowhere to, you can't go lower, like from
Yeah.
lust. When you meet in lust and you speak with your partner and then you like decide, which pizzerias you like or which neighborhood you like or something, then
Right.
eventually that's going to fade away and then your relationship's going to die. Maybe it's at least going to be challenged at some point.
Sure.
In this one, it didn't go that way. It's really just been riding this whole idea of, riding it upward and creating a functional relationship has worked with each other. She's the smartest person I ever met. She's so creative. She loves me to death. We travel well together. We just came back from Salt Lake City yesterday, and she's from Ukraine. So
Okay.
we're a pretty formidable pair.
Yeah.
Very unlikely. He had some very unlikely in our appearance, very unlikely together. So people's first question for us almost all the time is, how did you meet? It's a pretty good question because she doesn't have any of this shit I'm talking about. All of this stuff that I've talked about, from sports to Chicago, she knows cities in her own way.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know anything about sports. She doesn't know LeBron James and Mick Jagger, they're the same as far as
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha. That's fascinating that you start off despising each other and it turns into something beautiful.
It is beautiful. The universe has done its job and conspiring many times to put us back together.
Yeah.
We broke up a couple times, so this is round 3, but round 3 is now about 8 years old. So
Okay.
we're here for real. We got married in 2020 when we moved up here from LA. It's kind of a flash, to COVID lockdowns were already there. So I found somebody who could officiate in Emerald Bay at Lake Tahoe. And so we got married in Lake Tahoe in 2000.
Oh, cool. Very cool. I want to, at this point in conversation, I want to just give the audience some brief insight from my perspective
Yeah.
of mental health and that kind of thing, just so it can relate to the way that you've made your decisions about the industry itself. I started therapy in 1994. First time I ever went to a psychiatrist was in 1994. And at that point, I had been struggling with depression quite a bit, dropped out of college, and was just going nowhere in my job that I had no opportunity to move higher up in the company. I was working for Tubby's. If you remember Tubby's.
Yeah. Tubby's.
Yeah, Detroit.
Yeah.
I was working for them, wanted to go to graphic design school, get a degree in that, and then move into the advertising department because I was working at one of the CEO's personal stores. So I had a direct line for all intensive purposes, but it wasn't going to happen. And so 94, I started therapy, and probably about 4 months into it, the therapist is starting to have his own mental health issues.
Pretty common.
Yes. And so he refers me to another psychiatrist, a colleague, who was probably the best thing that happened to me at that point in time, because she wasn't from here. She was from Canada,
Mm-hmm.
but working here. And she was, at the time as well, she was a resident at St. John's and Maross in Detroit.
Okay. Yeah.
So after a little while of working with her, I got to the point of I couldn't take it anymore. I thought I had no outlets whatsoever. So I attempted suicide, cut my wrists, and it just so happened that while I was in the middle of doing it, my parents walked into the house and kind of halted that process, got her on the phone. She's like, all right, get him to Maross, to St. John's. We'll get him admitted. We'll start some process of working on what we can do to move forward there. And so for the audience, if you don't know, what you get admitted to hospital, it's initially a 72-hour hold. You can't leave, can't look forward to going home within that 72-hour period.
Well, we can discharge you, but we can keep you against your will. So we can discharge you after one day if we want. But a 72-hour hold doesn't lock you into 72 hours from our perspective. But from your perspective, you have nothing to say for 72 hours.
That's how it was put to me. No say in it. You're here for 72. I get to 72 and I think I'm feeling all right enough to go home. But of course, like you just described, the doctor decided otherwise. And at that point in time, the floor that I was on, the psych ward floor, it was everybody and anybody was there. So it didn't matter what your issue was, that's where you were. And it was lockdown component. Was fortunate enough to have my own room, but otherwise it was just everybody, seeing everybody experiencing everything of all shades and forms of what mental health was going to look like. And also too, that's when they started trying to get a medication to work for me. At that point in time in 95 rather, is when this took place. There was a whole bunch of stuff coming on the market. Prozac was on the market at that point, and they're just trying everything and nothing is working for me.
Yeah.
I'm getting sick.
It doesn't work.
I'm getting sick. I'm feeling worse than I did when I came in. And so eventually got to a point where we found a combination. The first combination that I was on was Nardil, which is an MAOI, and Klonopin, which helped for the anxiety and the stress component. So was on that, got stabilized with it for a period of time. And then eventually, after about 6 weeks, was allowed to go into the outpatient program. And then 6 weeks of that was able to be released out into being just at home full time, not having to go back to the hospitals. Fast forward to 2001, I'm playing soccer, blow my knee out, have to go in for surgery, get all the way to the anesthesiologist coming in to put me under. He looks at my chart and he's like, "You're on Nardo?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Well, I can't put you under, you'll die." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, this medication, it'll not work well with the anesthesia. You could potentially die. And so I can't put you under while you're on this." So I'm like, I'm pissed, number one, because I'm like, why am I already in the operating room before somebody catches this? Secondly, I'm like, now I've got to come off of a medication that I've been on that has somewhat kept me stable. It hasn't solved the problem of depression and anxiety and stuff, but it's at least stabilized me to be able to halfway function. And so I have to come off of it. And in that time period as well, I'm starting to develop an infection in my knee where it's tore. Finally get back in, get the surgery, but I'm off my meds. So going back to the psychiatrist, it's like, all right, definitely not going back on Nardil. So that's a no. So again, we jump into the whole cycle of try this, we'll try this, we'll try this, we'll try this. Finally get to Elavil, which is an older medication that was going to work well with the Klonopin, because she put me right back on the Klonopin as well. So there's only a 2-week period of time that I have not been on Klonopin since 1994. So you as a doctor know what that looks like for my body in terms of that being on it so long. So get on it, get stabilized again, but stuff isn't working. The therapy's not working. The questions that I have going through my head and asking the doctor about, she can't answer for me. So she says, let's send you off to U of M to the depression center there. I know the head of the department. Let me put in a request to have him see you and see if we can get you in there and get you treated. Get there, get accepted. So I'm driving there an hour one way every week for about 6 weeks. And at the end of 6 weeks, the psychiatrist that I was seeing there had talked with the head of the department and were like, we're not seeing any potential for being able to help this kid. And so the head of the department calls me into his office and he says, today is going to be your last day here. I said, why is it going to be my last day? And he's like, we're not going to be able to help you with the protocol and program that we have. And so in my head, I'm like, all right, what the hell's going on? If I'm at U of M, one of the top universities in the country, and I have the head of the department telling me you can't help me, like, what the fuck is my future going to hold?
Yeah.
And so I leave there with tremendous distaste
Yeah.
for the structure that I'm in, but also too knowing that the psychiatrist that I have, because she's from Canada, she has a different mindset about structure and possibility. And so I was very fortunate that she would allow me to go outside and try other alternative options over the course of my years of being there. So from that perspective, I've always looked at the fact that there is a problem within psychiatric help, and it is just a consistent mindset of we just need to stabilize and maintain rather than solving the problem or the issues that may be there.
Okay.
And so that's a little bit of my perspective. So you have an understanding why this conversation has really I've been looking forward to it. And because I think in the same way from the perspective of a patient that there is other opportunity for healing outside of traditional medicine. And a lot of times that is the best course of action for individuals.
Yeah.
So that's my take, just to give you some feel of how
modern medicine is not meant to heal. It doesn't even say it's going to, it doesn't even lie about it. It doesn't even promote itself as a healing tool. It is simply to contain, to define and contain. And there are ways to heal, but it has nothing to do with protocols associated with conventional traditional medicine.
Exactly. As you've started stepping somewhat in and out, but leaning more towards stepping out of that field and looking at other opportunities, what are some of the first things that you start to realize that you can apply in a different way to actually help people to start healing from that mental health standpoint?
Well, I think the idea of creating real relationships is what's really required. And ultimately, nothing is more powerful. There is no medicine ever been created by any laboratory ever that's more powerful than a human connection. So we start really looking at, in order to have a human connection, what has to be done? We have to come in touch with who we are, because otherwise, if I introduce you to myself as someone who's pretending to be somebody in order to protect the person I really am, then you're not going to get a relationship with me. So the thing I have to do is explore, like, who am I underneath all this nonsense? What does really matter? What did little Freddie in the playpen, what did he want? This Freddie still want, because I'm the same man. I'm still the same human.
Yes.
So we come in touch with our authentic, real, genuine self, and then we can create the possibility of having relationships. So relationship at the core of all healing is what's really important to me. And that's the essence of love anyways. And really getting that there might be nothing wrong with it, and never has been anything wrong with it. Even when you were pretty sure that there was something, even when you were giving up, even when you slashed your wrist, even when the whole thing, you start realizing there was never anything wrong with it. And the same idea that we don't blame a log for burning in the fire. So we don't have to blame ourselves for being confused in a confusing situation. So the things that take place, all these kind of things, is getting ourselves grounded, getting ourselves in touch with our authentic, core, genuine, honest core honest values, our honest purpose in life, and then presenting that to others and making ourselves available so that we can be an assistant to others, so that we can be somebody who can receive and exchange and connect with another human being through conversation and communication.
Right.
Meditation is important, gratitude is important, nature is important, nutrition is important, hydration is important, spirituality is important, being of service is important, sleep hygiene is important, creativity is important, being with your pets is important, getting outside is critical, having authentic conversations is really important. And, I made a list of things. It's called the Moss Method. And the Moss Method is not, I didn't make up any of the 20 things on this list, but I compiled them because they're age-old, successful, time-tested, and proven ways to get ourselves grounded in the world. And we can do that whether or not we have a diagnosis. No, I don't give a shit what anybody gave you as a diagnosis. It didn't change anything. Zero. I'm not interested at all. Not that I'm disinterested, I have to put it in the chart somewhere, but if it calls you schizoaffective disorder, do I care? Not at all. Do someone call it the same doctor or next door neighbor of that doctor calls you ADD? Do I care? And not at all. How about if they say you have PTSD? I don't give a shit. You're on this.
Right.
So,
I
don't, it doesn't do anything. There's nothing there. It's categorizing, and it's more than anything, it's typecasting. It's like creating a world. A diagnosis can be so damaging in its own right. As soon as you believe the diagnosis, as soon as you're told there's something wrong with you, and you become that which you think they told you have. If I tell you you have ADD, all of these bells and whistles might go off in your head. Oh, I must be like my buddy Jimmy who's got ADD, or I guess I'm going to now have to take Adderall, or whatever you decide that you're going to have to do. It's all made up, 100% of it. And we start getting that none of us have a recipe book. None of us have an owner's manual. We don't know what the hell we're doing. Of course we don't. We have no idea how to take on the next minute in time. Not at all. We don't have an instruction book for that. So when we start seeing that me and you are really remarkably similar in the idea that we're stumbling and bumbling and tumbling through the world, there's a tremendous peace that happens there rather than the opposite. I think people are looking for doctors to pretend like we know what the hell we're doing. Well, you're the doctor. Yeah, I'm the doctor, but I'm not you.
Yeah.
Like, who knows more about you? You?
Yeah.
Or me as a doctor? Like, let's just be real about it.
For sure.
So that's what's really here is I think that if you have to compile anything, it's about getting in the center of a human relationship.
Yeah. And it's fascinating for me to be able to hear your story from the beginning as well, because I can see that was formed for you early on.
First minute. Punching the Tom card is what I call one of my stories. It's like, as soon as I came out, I'm like, what do you want me for? Oh, I see. I'm supposed to unify this family.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then even fast forwarding, you've got your older siblings that are kind of giving you the lay of the land. Yeah. And then once you start stepping into that field, you're working with individuals who are troubled, and you're treating them just as regular people.
It's all they are. Right? And wants to argue with me about that, go ahead. But I'm going to stick with the idea that all we all are regular people.
Yeah, exactly. That's the beautiful part for me, hearing this and having this conversation with you, is being able to track that all the way through.
That's what the memoirs cover as well. So the memoirs are great. I'm very excited about them. They should come out in about a month. It's in the editing, proofing area. And all of these stories are in them. And every story that I've told you is in those memoirs.
Very cool.
39 chapters or something. And it's just honestly told, the honest truth of how I got to be me.
Nice, nice. The Creative 8, Healing Through Creativity. How did that come into being?
Well, in 2006, I took a bunch of people off of medicine. I had a troubling year for things I'm not ready to. I don't think it would. It's a cool podcast in its own right. But 2006 was a year of some significant shakeup. So I took a couple hundred people off their medicine in 2006, and that was thought to be pretty radical. But one of the things I realized that they got better. All of them got profoundly and substantially and radically and reliably better.
Yeah.
That was like, oh, I see the medicines are causing problems in many cases. So I should never write for medicines ever again. So instead of that, and I still have written medicines since, because sometimes that's what the job asked me to do, but never because that's what my heart asked me to do. So that level of duplicity is still sits with me. And I started to look, instead of screaming from the mountaintops that the medicines are hurting people, stop giving it, violently.
Yeah.
It was like, well, how can I get this point across without violence? And I started looking at the whole system. It's not the medicine. It's not the medicines at all. It's not the doctors. It's not the doctors at all. It's not the insurance company. It's not the medical industrial complex. It's not the hospitals. It's not your therapist. It's not your parent. It's, you think there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And we start really looking at, well, what are we going to do with that? Because if you didn't think there was anything wrong with you, you wouldn't go to the doctor to find out what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
And psychiatry is the only subspecialty that I know of where if you tell a patient that they're okay, then they get pissed. There's no other subspecialty that has that crazy quality.
Yes.
Oncologist tells you you're okay. You're like, awesome.
Fantastic.
Cardiologist tells you you're okay. You're like,
Yep.
so good.
Yep.
Neurologist tells you you're okay. It's awesome. Psychiatry tells you okay. You're like, you're a quack. I'm going to go next door. Why not come and see you in the first place? People know that there's something wrong with them. So when we started looking at that, we started looking at, well, what can we do? Because people want to know, if you take me out medicine, what are you going to do with what's wrong with me? It's like, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with me. It's not a good way to end the sentence, actually. So what can we do with the creative aid is we start realizing there are ways to get ourselves a more sense of optimized life, a groundedness, an awareness, consistency and alignment, right? And the way to do that is when at least among other ways, I've found that when people are doing any kind of art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening, photography, these are the top 10. The symptoms or the so-called discomfort actually goes away in the middle of those activities. And you then are left with a choice when the activity is over about whether or not you're going to go back to feeling miserable. You think we have been taught that misery's waiting in the corner doing push-ups. It's going to come and get you again.
Right.
That's not how it works. You get to make a choice once you're relieved from misery about whether you're going to hustle back to being miserable because it serves some purpose, or step forward from the release that you just got. You don't have to go back and be miserable after the creative aid. So the creative aid is an instruction to pick among other things, pick 3 of the things I just listed and do each one maybe 1 minute per day. So draw for a minute a day, tap on the side of the table for a minute a day, or dance or sing or cook or garden. And when you do that, my goal is
Do you need to take that?
My goal is that you will then be able to be left with a relief while you're going through the activity, but also a choice to relieve yourself afterwards without feeling like you're compelled to go back to being very uncomfortable. You don't have to be very uncomfortable. Are there 100 reasons to be uncomfortable?
Oh, for sure.
Like, how long would it take us to come up with 100? Maybe like 4 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
How about 100 reasons to be really nervous?
Yes.
How about 100 reasons to be terrified?
For sure.
How about 100 reasons to be really scared, really sad?
Yep.
For sure. How about 100 reasons to be distracted?
Oh, yeah.
How about 100 reasons to be awkward?
Yep.
No lack of reasons.
Exactly.
You want to fall for one of those tricks? You can go ahead, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement you be miserable. Are there reasons to be miserable? Literally thousands.
Yeah.
You just don't have to choose one of them. You get to choose. You're not being strung along, even though we've been trained to think that we are.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I try to convey with this platform as well. Being an artist, being a creative my entire life, being gifted with the ability, because I didn't learn it. I just knew how to do it
Yeah.
from the get-go. Refined it through some study, but not a lot of that. Most of it was self-refinement based off of um, continuing to go in that direction.
Yeah.
But through those processes of the creative practice, I definitely have known that those times were the times when I didn't or wasn't even paying attention
Exactly.
to the things I was depressed about.
Well, you think that your things you were depressed about, but you see, you were relieved from your depression during that time.
Yeah,
Those things aren't making you depressed. It's your view of those things that are making you depressed. You don't
yeah,
have to have the same view. You don't have to go back to be undepressed once you've been relieved.
yeah, for sure, for sure. One of the things that I found super interesting was the fact that you took this task on to take people off of their medications.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've been following, I'm curious to know if you've been following or not, is the work that's being done to try to get ibogaine implemented as a resource for helping with addictions, to helping with people come off
Yeah.
of medications, all of those things. Is that something you followed at all?
Yeah. I'm familiar with it.
Okay. From my perspective, like I'm truly hopeful that this is able to be presented as a resource because I think it'll be tremendous and create such a tremendous change with people who are struggling
Mhm.
versus what's there to begin with
Yeah.
to help people. Because a lot of times, if for addiction, if you get put on methadone or Suboxone, you end up becoming addicted to those.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of thoughts about this. In fact, this job at Newport Beach is, that's a lot of what we talked about this morning with the recruiter is, the problem with it is we still are ingesting something in order to learn how to not ingest anything.
Yeah,
So there's a problem. There's still a bridge you have to cross. Even if they boga, you still are putting something in your mouth with the goal of getting to the point where you no longer have to put something in your mouth. And that's just it's a hard track to follow. That's
gotcha.
the problem with it philosophically. So when we start looking at it, it's a powerful medicine. Don't get me wrong. I mean, really, most of the plant medicines and, ketamine there's some promising aspects to it, LSD even. But every time you take a medicine in order to help somebody learn how to never have to take a medicine again, it lies in the face a little bit of what you're trying to do. So
Got it.
what Iboga does, or what ketamine does, is it restructures your foundation of how you see life so that addiction is no longer the optimal path to take to deal with unresolved trauma.
Yeah,
All right. That's what it does. It just like disintegrates and recontextualizes how you see life in general. And now taking drug doesn't look as good as it did before in order to deal with your concerns about life. See,
right.
if you start getting that the drugs you're taking are actually causing the problems they're marketed to treat, then we got a hurdle to deal with right there. That's a huge hurdle.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I track with you on all of that. For sure. Absolutely. Fred, I've truly enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah.
It's been very enlightening, very entertaining, very connected because of our Detroit roots.
I know. We'll talk all about these intersections and you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's pretty fun.
Exactly. And we didn't even get to some of the greatnesses of the Bad Boy years and Barry Sanders.
I got married on the Bad Boy year. That marriage that took place on the corner in, between Cook and Lake County in Chicago, underneath my tuxedo was Mulhorn, Langbeer, and Thomas.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Never be a team like that.
Yeah, I think it was Rodman.
Yeah.
Rodman, Thomas,
Lambier.
and Langbeer. Maybe Mulhorn, because Mulhorn was a pretty serious bad boy.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one of the things I always want to leave the audience with at the end of each one of these episodes is just a gentle reminder to always listen to your heart as your story has showed forth, but in the same breath, be kind to your mind.
I love it.